Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video I'm going to be giving you a demonstration of this really nice commissioned Isle of Doom lighthouse that I've been working on. One of my viewers has been wanting an Isle of Doom, and I suggested to him, you know, we could pretty easily get one that's in mostly working shape, and then just restore it and get it to exactly the specifications that you're looking for. And it would be way more reliable than if you were to try and buy one of the ones on eBay that are like fully working, because this piece at this point in time is kind of getting to be unreliable in general, and I'll show you a bit why later. This piece has been fully redone. The only really original stuff on it are like the original motor mechanisms, the cannon light, this light, and the lighthouse ultraviolet. But everything else has been redone from the ground up. So when this piece came to me directly from the eBay seller, the circuit that does the skull lights, these lights, the different cabin lights was out, and also underneath the pier. But then the inner tower lights were still working, but not that great. And this is something I've honestly wanted to try on more of my buildings, and perhaps I'll do this soon. The first one I ever tried was with Dr. Stretch and Pulls, because I actually redid the neon sign with neopixels, which are what these are. Neopixels are really handy because you can get them in strands, just like these. And if you have an Arduino, you can go ahead and code it to be exactly what you need. Sorry, I unplugged it with my knee, unfortunately. My extension cord here isn't the best. But basically the Arduino is able to run all of the neopixels and tell them to be whatever color or pattern that they need to do. And also on the back of this piece now, there's a switchboard. So I added these little dip switches here, so you can turn on and off the motors individually. So now all of the motors are off. If you want this piece to be more quiet, you could just have the guys still on, or like we can turn back on dip switch 1 to do just the lighthouse motor. But without him, it's a bit quieter. So it's kind of nice, because also if you're like me and you kind of leave the buildings out a lot longer than they should be, because I like to have them out maybe for, you know, August till, sometimes I even leave some of my buildings up in my Christmas villages, so it's like they're out a while. Or I know some people even have them up year round, so having the ability to actually switch off the motors is pretty nice, because it should increase the overall piece's longevity. Because really you could leave the lights on even all night if you wanted to, because really the LEDs shouldn't fail. And like with most household lights, just like a random side note, most of the reason why those fail is bad power supplies. So as long as your power supply running your piece isn't trash, then it should keep your piece running. And that's been a topic in some of my other videos about lemax troubleshooting. Always check your power supply first, because so many of them, especially if they're like older ones, have failed, or I've had them start to fail. So even though some people have superstitions on like always just use the piece's original power supply, it's really not true. Just make sure that it's the correct voltage rating. So if you have a 4.5 volt adapter and it's actually correctly rated, and you're using a 4.5 volt building, it should be fine. Just don't try and grab like, oh, this is a power supply for Isle of Doom that's 24 volts AC. Then yeah, that'll cook most of the buildings, unless you have the Isle of Doom or the old Halloween fountain. Anyway, that's another new thing though with this particular piece, is it has been customized now to run off of 4.5 volts. So technically you could run it from a regular lemax power supply now. However, this piece is still pretty power hungry, mostly because NeoPixels can actually use a fair amount of juice, because each LED kind of has its own little IC chip. So you don't really want to run it off of lemax power supplies just because they're kind of weak. So we actually got this power supply, and I glued the knob in place so it shouldn't change. So it's at 4.5 volt. You could have it at 5 volt too. I mean, it really should be fine, but 4.5 volt. So you could technically run any lemax building from this. Since it's a regulated power supply, it will automatically step up or step down power to keep it at 4.5 volts. So if all of a sudden the piece is barely using anything, it'll stop producing as much juice so it doesn't cook anything. So basically the original piece, it uses one of these. This is what some of the original stuff looks like. This is the original Mister board. And then also have, these are the power regulator boards. And what I mean by power regulators, this is what steps the power down, because Isle of Doom would have 24 volts AC come into the piece for the old Misters, because they basically just slapped a regular ultrasonic Mister from that time into here, and then this takes the 24 volts and it steps it down to 5 volts. For whatever weird reason, they have a rectifier on here, which that takes AC, which is alternating, and puts it into DC so it doesn't fluctuate with positive and negative flipping. So for some reason this doesn't have its own rectifier, but it just takes the 24 volts DC, which is technically closer to 30 volts, because basically when you have AC, if it's 24 volts AC, you'll have waves, and then when you convert it into DC, it takes the peak of those waves and it has capacitor to try and store it at that peak. So you get closer to 30 volts, because 24 volts is kind of like the medium. It's not the peak and it's not the low. So it's kind of just the middle area. Basically, this though will then turn it into 5 volts. These get super hot. They're unreliable. They're just kind of garbage, honestly. And I've done this now for a few Isle of Dooms, including my own. This is like the 4th Isle of Doom that I've worked on. And so I had one earlier, just before this Isle of Doom, that I just installed a newer power regulator in. And so these newer ones are much more efficient, and these are regulated, so they're actually able to account for lows and highs and actually make sure that the power output is the same, whereas these don't. This is just kind of, it's about 5 volts, 4.5, whatever. It's like close, but it doesn't actually know anything. So this is actually smarter and more efficient and doesn't get hot. This thing gets hot, so they have a giant like aluminum heat sink to try and cool it down. This one only needs a little small one, and even then, I've had these run for like hours, and they barely get warm. So whereas this one would get toasty. You could actually feel it on the back of the lighthouse getting like warm because these are mounted on the back side of the lighthouse. The ones for the mister are mounted on the front pier side. They're screwed in right here on the inside, and this would only get hot if you added water, because it actually has a water sensor inside of here to know if there's water or not. For this one, there's a switch on the inside of the skull to turn it off. And this uses now one of the newer ultrasonic misters like Lemax has been doing in their newer buildings, which is way more efficient and less messy than the old ones. I still sort of like the old ones for some applications, like if you have a fountain or something and you don't care about splash. But these new misters are great because they basically just have a wick, and then you have the actual the mister part. So all I did is I glued a sponge and then the wick in here. Then I have a switch to just give it power or not. And I also used a new PC like mini fan. So those just switch on and off with that switch there. And this is running dry. Like, there's no water in this basin right now, mostly because I'm going to be shipping it out hopefully tomorrow to the customer. And this is great. It's way less mess. If anyone's actually tried running the regular Isle of Doom, like if it was original, with the mister, that thing makes a horrible mess. it's like a joke, because and I think originally Lemax actually included a mat, like a placemat, and to try and like protect your table from becoming a soppy mess. But I would never ever run it because it's such a liability. Like, it would make everything just soaked because it splashed water out. So this is pure mist and doesn't have any of that splash off. So here is like dry. It doesn't feel damp. It's like a tiny bit just because I've had it running now, but it's nowhere near the kind of mess that the original mister has. And again, this runs off of the 4.5 volts or 5 volts. So it's really effective. And also on the back here, on these other switches, I have two, 3 of the misters control the motors. So the first one does the lighthouse motor. The second one does the guy on the keg. The third one does the door. The fourth is just a blank switch. And then the fifth does lightning flashes on or off. So you can toggle that. Lightning is just something I had an idea as, and my customer really thought it was a good idea as well, so we tried it, and I think it turned out really well on this piece. And since these are NeoPixels, it's able to use the lightning really well because it can turn these lights to be any color. So since you can have the lights be any color you want, technically you could have it like, oh, if you didn't like the green color, you could actually have it be blue or orange or whatever. And like, I can tell the interior lights to flicker, which kind of adds this nice ambience to the piece. It just adds more depth and character, I feel like, than what the original had. I always thought it was kind of weird that they had these like LEDs glued in here, which are now gone. You can still see the light shining through pretty well, but that's just kind of weird because like they don't look like lanterns, and the interiors of the buildings never really lit up very well. And like up here was always really dark. Now it actually like shimmers nicely with actual candlelight. And like inside of here, it actually glows. You can actually see inside of the window and stuff. And so with the lightning, though, it can basically take any of the LEDs that I tell it to and have it flicker them to be white. And I wrote a whole lightning randomization code. So it'll take a duration randomly of 5 up to 20 seconds and pick a number anywhere in there. And it's in milliseconds. So it can be, 5.2 or what. It can be anything in between 5 and 20. And that's the duration in between strikes. So if you had it flash just right then, and then it'll randomly come up to the next strike. Right now it seems like a longer span. Unfortunately, this piece, there wasn't really anything to sync to, like lightning soundtrack wise, but it seemed like a really neat piece to try lightning on, since it's like this haunted island. So as a randomization effect to pick these numbers in between 5 to 20 seconds, and then each lightning flash is also random. And I believe that was up to like half a second to like 2 seconds long. And if they're over like 6 seconds, then it would have a double flash. If you look, when we have a longer flash, you'll see that it'll flash and then turn off and then flash again. So there, it just did it. So if you back up the video and watch it again, you'll see that it had a flash, it turns off and then flashes again. So it's just adds more of a random lightning effect versus it just being a repeated thing over and over. So kind of more unique than like a lemax lightning strike. But unfortunately, the audio doesn't match anything. But I think if you just have the piece off, like I usually do is sound-wise, the lightning is really nice because it just looks like it should have lightning. And also, I think something interesting is the interior lights also do the lightning strike. And with these new LEDs, they're actually able to shine through the porcelain and actually makes it look like a nice lighted building versus Lemax's original design. And now it almost looks like if there's lightning striking like outside, because if it's so bright everywhere, it looks like lightning is shining out here. It's kind of like an optical illusion of using the interior lights to make it seem like the lightning's outside because of it's shining through the porcelain. And then one other effect that I added is the switch on the end, which is able to add this other little effect to the skull's eyes that makes them fade in and out. And it just adds a little bit more of a creepy look to it. And it might not be for everybody, and like that's why I also made it switch offable, so you can actually just turn it off if you don't like that effect, or if you get tired of it and you just want them to be on. And so if you switch that switch off at any point, the lights will revert to being full brightness. So that works pretty well, where you can just switch it off and it'll be full brightness again. So I just feel like that might be something Lemax might do for their newer buildings, and it just adds another little lighting effect, especially if, let's say, you wanted the lightning to be off. So now lightning's off and you just have the skull's eyes there doing that. Now that the lightning's turned off, we can also appreciate more of the flickering without any interruptions. There's a lot of little details on this that really bring it to life with just kind of the whole ambience of it now. This is obviously even a new light, because originally there was only a light under here and then in the skull and stuff. This piece is way brighter than it was originally. And it's like up here, we have one light that's actually on all the time, down here, shining forward. And that's just on sort of dim. And then up in here, we have one light that's flickering. And there's another one back here adding like this orange glow shining up onto the tower and stuff. And then the tower itself has multiple flicker patterns. Each one, if you look, they flicker at different times. So in here, up here, here, and here. But for the tower, it was necessary to have certain LEDs flicker at the same time as others. Because there's, I think, 2 LEDs sort of visible to the window here. And there's only one up here. And at first I had these 3 all on one channel. It just looked off to me. It seemed cheaper. And it looked like just a regular Walmart candle or something. So I wanted to make sure that the top and here had different flicker patterns. So it actually looked like real candle lighting on the inside, that they had different candles in between here and here. So these 2 flicker on the same, and this one flickers by itself. They also have different brightness, and again, it's picked in random values, so you don't see the same effect, and it never loops. All of the effects on here are kind of randomly generated constantly, so there's nothing that's repeatable, so it doesn't ever seem like it's getting repetitive. And in the bottom of the tower, it doesn't really pick up on camera very well, because now this piece has a really nice orange glow versus like annoying lime green yellow look. And so the tower, it glows really nicely, and then down in here, if you look through the hole, there's more of this deeper orange, sort of similar to what's visible here. It's more like a reddish orange, and I think it just adds more depth to it. And so down in there, the light, it has its own flicker channel. And then for here, we have one more light that's on all the time, that's lower on the side, and then multiple flickering in the roof. And so I think it just turned out really well. And on the back, there's actually more LEDs here. So if we turn on the lightning again, you'll see that those turn on only with lightning. And I think that really will pop. It'll really show when you have this piece sitting on a table or next to a wall, because this will actually project lightning into the room and the space more, and again adds to that illusion of like real lightning striking in the vicinity of the building versus it just being shown directly on the outside. So I think it turned out really well. I'll also show quick with the lights on. With the lights on, sometimes you can even see the colors a bit more of what I'm talking about with the oranges and stuff. But it also lets you see the fog better, because the fog really works well. I had it out on a table the other day, just making sure everything's looking good and working, because I want to vigorously test it before I send it back, so for sure any errors or weird things I didn't think of are fixed. But I just had the fog running for a while, and it's able to make this really nice blanket of fog, and again without it being like wet. And so if you blow, you can see like there's actually a nice amount of fog production that it makes. So I think it turned out really well, and I'm sure it'll be loved for years to come. So if anyone has piece they're interested in getting customized, I have contact info on my YouTube About page. So they've made it kind of weird sometimes to find, but you can usually click somewhere on my profile and stuff and find it. So I am open to doing customization work and repairs and stuff. It'll vary depending on the piece you have and how much needs to be done. It's not super cheap. The amount that it took for this piece to be brought to life like this cost probably more than getting one just on eBay. So it's like if you have a piece that's just a regular one that can be bought again for like $100 or less, it might be more worth it for you to just buy another building, because this isn't it's not, unfortunately it's not something that can be done super quickly and easily. So sometimes if it's just like a rubber belt or simple wiring job, little lights replaced, it's fine for me to check it, and I can sometimes fix that for like 20 or 30 bucks. But you also have to factor in shipping though, which unfortunately is kind of a killer nowadays. So either way, I'm happy to help people with their issues. So if you have buildings and stuff that have problems, you can let me know, and I'm happy to do work. And definitely though, if you have a custom lighting idea that you really want to have a piece redone and have it be completely unique and even more stunning than the piece was originally, we can definitely work with that. Another one that'll be on my channel soon or in the coming weeks is Frankenstein's Laboratory. The same viewer that had me do this also has a failed computer board for Frankenstein's Laboratory, unfortunately. So if you have a computer board that dies like this one did, we're gonna see what we can do with replacing it with an Arduino to run everything. So maybe we can even come up with better effects and more flickering and stuff on that as well. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching this video, and let me know if you have any questions.